If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 7 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029. And it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Hello, welcome. This video is predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon, the famous singer from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and still is performing and making music today. The famous Paul Simon is predicted to die on August 1st, 2025. And this video will explain some truly profound reasons for how this is known, prophetic signs and connections that God has demonstrated recently that confirm that the date that Paul Simon will die on August 1st. These are recent signs. However, it has been known that Paul Simon would die on August 1st since November 9th, 2024. That said, this email here documents this prediction is being made ahead of time. The timestamp, as you can see, says 2 hours ago. That's because I just wrote the reasons the prophetics wrote about the prophetic signs that just occurred 2 hours ago. But we can see here the date is July 27th that I wrote this email. If you are skeptical for some reason, email me and I'll forward this to you. But also the date that this video was posted on the social media platform that you are watching it on also proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time. All right, now to the skeptic that will still doubt this, even though I have documented that this prediction has been known since November 9th. But regardless, even if I just learned about this prediction today, the skeptic will say, well, you know, you're going to make a video or two with reasons for every day of the year until finally he dies and you get lucky and whatever. Well, only a crazy person would do that. And the person who thinks that someone like myself would do that is the crazy person, right? That's completely irrational. But human beings aren't rational by nature. And the reason for that is because they hold on to their worldview belief system as much as possible and resist anything that contradicts their worldview. In psychology, it's called belief perseverance. When someone encounters information that contradicts their worldview, they block it out, or they come up with some irrational reason for how the information isn't true. Why do they do that? Because changing one's worldview is very uncomfortable. It's existentially threatening, in fact. So it's like a psychological thing. It's hardwired into people's brains. I don't know why God did this. Well, I have theories. It's part of how it is through in other words, the reason why the human species is made this way is partly because it requires a person's heart to change and come to the truth, which is that there is a righteous God that one is accountable to, requires a change of heart. And that, the truth that there is a righteous God that one is accountable to for their sin, is exactly why most people have chosen the worldview that is irrational, because they do not want there to be a righteous God that they are accountable to. If anything, they find it icky. Like, ew, the thought of them praying to a God in the morning and stuff like that, that's just not for them. They might not even be a terrible, completely unrighteous sinner. There are two types of people, two camps of people that are on their way to hell: the unrighteous and the self-righteous. All right, so I went on for another 10 minutes or so, but the electricity in the room here caused my electronics to fry out the recording device. And so I said a lot of profound things, and I don't know if, I was just going with the flow. And so I can't really go with the flow again here and repeat what I just said. But I'll just say a couple of things here. I want to address two types of people, because the modern person in the West today, most of them fall into two camps, or two types, two worldviews, I should say. One is the agnostic atheist worldview, okay? This is the worldview that says that there is no God, or rather, the core belief of the core doctrine, the core doctrinal belief of this religion, because all worldviews are a religion, but the agnostic atheist religion is a true religion. It's a dogmatic religion, and the core belief system of it, the core belief of this belief system, is that, and every religion has a core belief. The core belief of the agnostic atheist religion is that there is no evidence for God. And even though there is an overwhelming amount of evidence, that's the core belief. And they're dogmatic about it, which is why they cannot accept any evidence for God, because of their belief perseverance. This psychological phenomenon, I forget if I mentioned that already, that says that a person will block out information that contradicts their worldview in order to protect it, because it's very uncomfortable to have to change one's worldview. And so the human species has developed this belief perseverance, but it's all designed by God, because ultimately the reason why God has designed humans to be like this is because it is a matter of the heart, and one needs to change their heart in order to choose God and come to the truth, which is that the true God is the righteous Christian God of the Bible, to whom one is accountable to for their sin. That's different than every other God, right? including, that I don't want to get into too much here, but including the God of Islam. Okay, but it's different. Now, but that's different also than the other dominant religion, which is even more dominant in the West today than the agnostic atheist religion. Let me get to that in a second. But the agnostic atheist religion, I'll just give you an example. Their religion requires far more faith. And what I mean by faith is not what the Bible says is being faith, but how the average non-Christian understands the word faith to mean in terms of religion. They think it means blind faith. So using that definition of faith, their religion requires far more blind faith than Christianity does. I mean, I personally didn't come to the truth about Christ through anything but hard evidence. But one needs to even come to the conclusion that there's a God before even that happens. And the evidence for that is overwhelming, including scientific evidence. And let me just give you one example to prove to you or show to you how irrational and how much faith it requires to be an agnostic atheist. We have known for decades that DNA is a code. It's a language, right? Code is a language, right? Bill Gates, for example, someone who knows a thing or two about computer code, said that DNA is a computer code, but it is far more complex than any computer code humans have ever developed. Okay, that's the words of Bill Gates. And as far as, and code, because it is a language, requires an intelligence. To say that a language could just evolve on its own without an intelligence is like saying that a newspaper came about through ink simply hitting a newspaper. But that would be impossible. It would require an intelligence to form the letters. Never could you ever get, through random chance in so-called evolution, code that is the DNA, okay, which is a language, and it is far more complex than any language humans have ever spoken or written as code. It's not binary. It's got 4 digits, okay? The computer code, the DNA code. Now, this brings up the big question. If DNA is a language, and as far as we know, language requires an intelligence, how in the world did the DNA, the language, the information, which requires intelligence, get inside the first single cell? Because, of course, the agnostic atheist, or rather the atheist, would say that we all evolved, everything evolved from a single cell through random chance, etc. Well, if that's the case, if it all started with a single cell, by the way, that's absurd in itself. But then again, the atheist religion is absurd. It's a fairy tale for adults. It's completely childish and completely immature to think, for example, that the cell came about on its own. The more we understand and learn about the cell, the more mysterious it gets, not the more we understand it. The more we can see, for example, into the cell with higher penetrating microscopes and things like this. But even the concept of mitosis, how in the world would that have evolved? That's absurd. Okay, but that aside, how did the single cell, the first one, get the DNA inside it if it requires intelligence? Okay, so the official atheist answer to this question is we have no idea. And when they say we, they arrogantly refer to themselves and all other rational thinking people, including scientists, who are the priests of their religion. They would say, well, we have no idea how the information, the DNA, get inside the first single cell, but the scientists will figure it out in the far future, or sometime in the future. Which is absurd, first of all. To think that there's even a possibility that information could evolve without an intelligence. That's absurd. But this is also an example of how that requires faith, and blind faith. The thing that they criticize Christians like myself for having, which I don't have. I do not have a blind faith. I know that there is a God like I know the sky is blue, because it's just reality and there's all kinds of evidence. I can see blue, I can see the evidence for other things that point to God. I mean, you don't look at a painting and not conclude that a painter painted the painting. That's so anyway, this is one example, and their religion is the irrational one. They are, and the irony is that they think that the people that believe in God are the irrational ones. Now, there are people that do believe in God that don't know any sort of apologetics or reasons for how they know, and they came to faith through some emotional experience or something, and okay, fair enough. And maybe they do have blind faith, but it does not require blind faith to be a Christian. It requires blind faith to be an atheist. And what the example that I just gave you is one of countless examples. Okay? Now, how come most people don't know this type of evidence, this scientific evidence for God? Well, that's another good question. That's because most people today in the West are stuck in 19th century science and scientific thinking or mentality. I mean, in the 19th century, we figured out that we didn't need the flood to explain the geology of rocks, right? And so they concluded back then, well, therefore we should probably be able to figure out an explanation for everything and not require the explanation of a God or an intelligent designer. That's like 19th century, right? When the West started falling away from believing in God. But the 19th century science, and I'm talking about last century, has overwhelmingly provided so much evidence for an intelligent designer. I mean, what I'm talking about for the DNA, that's from the 20th century also. Maybe I got my centuries mixed up there. I'm talking about people being stuck in the 19th century, and the 20th century science also, contrary to that thinking in the 19th century, overwhelmingly proves that there is an intelligent designer, including, for example, the discovery that DNA is a code, which was discovered in the 1990s, many decades from before now. But how come people still don't know this sort of stuff? I mean, we discovered at the Big Bang that the universe had a beginning, and that was, of course, evidence for God. And at the time, in the early 20th century, the atheist scientists were biting their nails and very worried until they started to try to figure out explanations like string theory, which is absurd and still isn't going anywhere because it's stupid. And so are the other explanations, like the multiverse. But even if you have a multiverse explanation, you still don't explain away this universe, because this universe is perfect. It's called the anthropic principle. And for example, the force of gravity is so finely tuned, like a radio dial. If you had a ruler from one end of the universe to the other, 13 billion light years across, and you adjusted the setting for gravity 1 inch compared to 13 light years of space, 1 inch, multicellular life would not be able to exist. That's how finely tuned gravity is, right? Well, that doesn't only apply to gravity. It applies to all of the known constants. They're all that finely tuned. And this isn't controversial. Every cosmologist and scientists know this. It's called the anthropic principle. The question is, for the atheist, well, how do you explain that? Well, they try to explain it away with the multiverse. And so they say, well, okay, if this universe is perfect, there must therefore be billions and billions and quadrillions of universes, and the odds are finally that you're going to have the perfect universe for life to evolve, etc., right? Well, that's fine, but what created the billions of universes? There's, in other words, a mechanism that's behind all of the universes, and that mechanism then therefore requires the intelligence. So you're not doing away with it, you're just taking it back a level. But anyway, so these sorts of things, right? Now, why does the mainstream culture not know this? Well, two reasons, or a few reasons. One, they don't want to know it. The mainstream culture does not, they're really, really into the culture that was birthed in the 1960s by the baby boomer generation in their cultural revolution. And they're loving their sin. They're loving their independence. They don't want there to be a God. So they don't want this sort of information. Like the agnostic atheist, if they're still listening to this video, they're rolling their eyes. They hate this stuff. You know, that's their mentality. They do not like it. They probably have turned the video off by now. In a lot of cases anyway. Hopefully not. Another reason, though, is the left, the secular progressive left. Because of the doing away with God, people need something to give them meaning in life. And in other words, they need a religion, and everyone has a religion. And the religion that's replaced Christianity for many people in the West is progressive politics, where the state and politics have replaced religion for them in their lives. That explains the mentality of the Democrat or the left person today, and how they are so ideological and dogmatic about their core beliefs, such as climate change. I mean, that's their new religion. People start worshiping the environment like the polytheists of old when they stop worshiping a god, for example, right? And so and they control this. These people are the ones who control the government, because government is their religion. They get into government, and then they control the power. And they have now made it illegal, a crime, to teach such a thing. You cannot teach in a school how DNA is a computer program that requires intelligence, and therefore the question is, how did it get inside the first single cell? You cannot teach that in a school. It's a crime, because this progressive politics is authoritarian. It's Gestapo. It's Nazis. They don't know it, and the irony is that they keep crying that the right of center average person that doesn't think like them to be the modern day authoritarians. It's all propaganda. They're all believing lies from Satan. They're believing their own propaganda. It's really sick. That's another story, though. But think about that. They've made it a crime to teach the evidence for God, and there is a God, and this is evidence for God. In other words, what are we talking about? They are anti-Christ. They are anti-God. They're what the Bible talks about. And these people persecute Christians. It's exactly what Bible prophecy speaks of. Okay? So whether or not they think they are a good person is irrelevant, because as Jesus said, no one is a good person. All have sinned. But whose definition of good is? It's all subjective if there's no God, including murder. There's no absolute morality if there's no God. I mean, the clear-thinking atheist will admit that. Most people aren't clear-thinking, but the clear-thinking atheist will obviously have to admit that. There's no absolute morality, including murder. There's nothing wrong with committing murder unless there's a God. I mean, the German tribe refused for a long time to get into line with the Roman Catholic civilization, because they had a problem with the commandment, thou shalt not murder. I mean, societies have in the past been all right with murdering. Before Christianity, murder was not this thing. You could murder. Not like today. Well, now, that's changing because we've done away with God, right? But, the Nazis did away with God, and what did they do? They murdered. The communists did away with God, and what did they do? They murdered. It's not a coincidence. I mean, another thing, Friedrich Nietzsche, he, famously said God is dead, but most people don't know the entire quote. He said, God is dead, and it will take generations for us to wash the blood off our hands. Because he had his ear to the ground. He knew what was coming in the 19th century, he predicted the 20th century, the bloodiest century in history. He knew that that was going to be the result, and sure enough, it was. Okay, so anyway, and the only reason why complete evil didn't engulf the world in the early part of the 20th century is because America was still Christian, and America saved the world. The Anglo-speaking nations were the true Christian nations, because Catholicism isn't Christianity. Not saying that Catholics can't be a Christian, but if they're going to be saved, it's in spite of their Catholicism and not because of it. That's another story, though. And anyway, America, God's Gentile nation, God designed it to be happen this way, ended up saving the world. But had it not been for America, we would be in such an evil place right now, because with time, things become more and more evil. So it would be even far more evil than even the Nazis were at this point in history, had it not been for America and Christianity. Okay? How foolish the modern Westerner is to not even recognize such a simple thing like I just said. I mean, they're living in the post-World War II era, and they don't even realize why it is that they are not living in complete evil right now. And it's because of Christianity. I mean, and America. The thing that, by the way, they hate. They hate America because it's spiritual. What they really hate is the red states America. And why do they hate the red states? Because they hate Christians. And why do they hate Christians? Because unconsciously, subconsciously, it's all spiritual. They hate God. And yet, okay, they might be a quote-unquote good person. Maybe they're not unrighteous, but they fall into the self-righteous camp. But the truth is, if they're a Democrat, and if they've ever voted Democrat, they are evil, and they voted for evil things. That's the truth, right? So they don't know that they're evil when they are evil. Progressive politics is evil. Now, that's enough of this introduction, I think. Oh, I need to address the other elephant in the room, which is that the vast majority of people actually today are not actually, in the West, are not agnostic atheists. I think polls show that about 13% of people are atheists. The other people that aren't Christian in the West today have adopted the Eastern religion, and they will say, if you ask them if they believe in God, they'll say yes, but he's not like the Bible, Christian God of the Bible. He's more like an impersonal energy, a supposed collective consciousness. He is the universe itself, even though the Big Bang disproves that. You know, I mean, speaking of science disproving other world religions, the Eastern religion was disproven with the discovery of the Big Bang, that the universe had a beginning. Okay, and so these people, though, will claim that the reason why I was able to know about this prediction for Paul Simon's death on August 1st is because supposedly somehow I tapped into the so-called collective consciousness or something to that effect. And I want to say to that person, wake up. Okay? What I am saying here is that the reasons, and there are tons of reasons that I'm explaining in these videos, these reasons that I'm explaining for how I know August 1st for Paul Simon are from the Bible and from prophetic signs from the God of the Bible that relate to the Bible. Again, the reason why Paul Simon will die on 8/1 is because of Revelation 8:1 and the description of the sound of silence in heaven. I did not tap into the collective consciousness. Now, I say that with such force in my voice because these people are not clear thinkers. In general, not even in general. The person that has adopted the New Age beliefs, etc., they don't think clearly. And so I need to be stern with them and speak sternly. Stop it. Your religion isn't true, and the new age that's coming is a counterfeit from Satan, and there is a Satan. And this will be proven when the prediction comes to pass, because it will prove the worldview of the Bible. And Satan's job is to fool you, and you have been fooled. And why have you been fooled? Into the supposed alternative New Age to the true New Age, which is the age of Christ ruling from earth in Jerusalem for the 1,000 years of peace. Not the New Age that aliens from outer space will be bringing, or some form of version of the New Age that you believe, in which people will become enlightened after they all start meditating or something to that effect. That's from Satan. Why do you want that to be the case? And why do you absolutely abhor? Why do you hate the Christian worldview? Again, it all comes down to the fact that you do not want to be accountable to a righteous God for your sin, including New Agers. They don't like that idea. They want any kind of God other than that God. Why is it that Christianity is the Christian that everyone is feeling comfortable with persecuting and ridiculing? And no other religion gets that treatment. It's because it's the true religion. Jesus said, "Blessed is he who is not offended by me." And the truth is, nothing is more offensive than Christianity. And whether they're the New Ager or the irrational New Ager or the irrational agnostic atheist, the reason for their irrationality is the fact that they are offended by Christianity. Completely offended. They hate it. And that's spiritual darkness. When the time comes and they die, they will be going to the dark place, which is their home. They want to be there. Life is a choice. If God wanted to create a creature to have a loving relationship with, he wouldn't just, after creating the creature, stand in front of it and say, "Hey, welcome to life. I'm God. Love me." Because that wouldn't engender sincere, genuine love. It would be forced. It'd be like marrying a robot or a woman that was forced to marry you. No one wants to marry a woman or a man that they're forced to love them. That's the same with God. He's desiring a creature that loves him and has a relationship with, a true one. Okay, and so that's why God partially hides himself, to give the opportunity for the creature to make a choice in a long enough period, a lifetime, as to whether or not they would like to be with him for eternity or not. And the agnostic atheist that's perhaps open-minded to there being a God, that doesn't cut it. That doesn't qualify. They've chosen not to be interested. Finding out when you die is a choice to not be interested and to live this life instead of the life in the kingdom. The true quote-unquote Christian, the true Christian, and most quote-unquote Christians are not true Christians, have an understanding that their life does not belong to them and that they have been born again. Jesus said you need to be born again, it's required, and that implies a death. Jesus said to follow him, the question is, where did he go? Well, he went to the cross and sacrificed his life. Why did he do that? Because this life is nothing. There is absolutely zero meaning to anything unless there's an eternity. I find it quite amusing when I encounter someone like I have recently that says, "I've accomplished all that I wanted to in life, and now I'm satisfied. I'm ready to die." It's absurd. There is no accomplishments unless there's an eternity. You can't take anything with you. It'll be like you didn't exist. What's the point of your accomplishments? Now, the irrational person will then say, well, my offspring. Well, they're going to die and their offspring won't remember you either. And furthermore, it won't even take very long after you die for your offspring to stop remembering you. Oh, well, the thing I left for generations to come. Well, you see, actually, in 900 million years, which isn't long as cosmologically, the sun will be too hot for life to exist on Earth. Oh, well, we'll colonize the stars. Oh, well, you know what? The universe has a lifespan too. So it's all meaningless. Nothing at all, zero, has any meaning. It's all fake. You're creating meaning in order for you to be optimistic enough to get out of bed every day. But you've just faked it. Anything that you get out of bed each day for, unless it's God, well, arguably God has designed it that family also is important and gives us meaning. But that family doesn't have any meaning unless they also go to eternity with the person that's, aligned with God. And that's why, the Christian will be interested in making sure that their family also makes it to heaven. So, now, so have I addressed that enough? Have I explained the New Ager enough? Come on. Think. I know it's interesting that the worldview of the Eastern New Ager type doesn't think clearly, but no, this was not learned through some kind of paranormal tapping into the collective consciousness. I know far better than you how this prediction is known. Furthermore, I'm explaining it in the video here. And speaking of which, let's get into the subject of this video. Paul Simon is predicted to die on the date 8/1, and this will point to Revelation 8:1, because again, the sound of silence that's described in Revelation 8:1, and Paul Simon's first major hit that launched his career was Sound of Silence. The first day of the 8th month will point to the 8th chapter of Revelation. The 8th chapter of Revelation regards trumpet judgments. On July 26th, 2025, Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs. In archaic English, the word trump means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. On July 26th, trumpet was in the UK for the weekend for golf. That's the story, how he was golfing on the weekend at his golf course in the UK. This coincided with the opening weekend of Adam Sandler's new Happy Gilmore movie about golf. That's what the movie is about. He's made a part 2 to his classic Happy Gilmore movie, which was released during the same weekend that Trumpet was golfing. The word golf consists of 4 letters. In the movie, Gilmore's wife dies from an errant golf ball. Presumably, she is hit in the forehead, which would hint at the number 4. The word fore is shouted, as in F-O-R-E, when balls are hit errantly. Okay? On the same opening weekend was the release of the movie Fantastic Four, the new Fantastic Four comic book movie. 4 plus 4 equals 8. Okay, so you got some 4s there. Simon is associated with the number 4, furthermore, because as I've explained many times in other videos, the bridge over troubled water hints at the symbolism for a bridge, which is the same metaphor in God's signs as the metaphor of a door. And the door is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The 4th letter is a symbol for a door. Okay, and so anyway, we have a 4 and a 4, and that equals 8, and Paul Simon's death will point to the 8th chapter of Revelation. Trumpet was in the news on July 26th while he was in the UK golfing for his social media posts criticizing the mainstream leftist media for being corrupt, because Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet his signs and truth. And he also used the words, quote, all hell would break out, unquote. The trumpets of judgment in the 8th and 9th chapters of Revelation are about hell breaking out. And speaking of the bridge and the number 4, is this door will be opened with the key and music speaking of Paul Simon, uses music keys. The key will open the door to the bottomless pit, from which the demons will cross over the bridge into the earthly realm. And so that's hell breaking out. Okay? And so trumpet said all hell would break out in conjunction with this symbolism of Thor, which hints at the door to the bottomless pit that the demons will break out of. You see what I'm saying here? All right, let's move on. Adam Sandler is known for being Jewish. This is largely because of his skit on Saturday Night Live of him singing Happy Hanukkah. Okay, so Saturday Night Live began Sandler's career, and he was well known for singing this satirical song that he wrote on the guitar on the live broadcast, Happy Hanukkah. It was quite funny. Well, I can't remember if it was funny or not. I just remember that he sang this. In the movie, Happy Gilmore 2, because this is part 2 that he's just made, Sandler's character is famous, and in the movie, the host of Jeopardy mentions that the character is Jewish. The name of the Sandler's character's love interest is Virginia Venet. This pattern is repeated in other Sandler movies with the names of the love interests of Veronica Vaughn in the movie Billy Madison, Vicky Valancourt in the movie The Waterboy, and Babe Bennett in Mr. Deeds, capital B. V is the 22nd letter of the alphabet. So VV, Veronica Vaughn, or etc. Virginia Venet in the Happy Gilmore 2 movie hints at 22 and 22. Now, Babe Bennett, B is the second letter, that also gives us a 22, BB. In God's signs, the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in the book of Ezekiel, and that would have been a Tav mark, which is the last and 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosomes come in pairs, and each chromosome has 2 arms, and so 2 and 2, as in 22. The rapture will be an escape from the mark of the Antichrist for God's faithful. The rapture will be on May 27th, 2029 on Pentecost, which will be 200 weeks and 2 days after the release of Happy Gilmore 2, in which the name of the love interest hints at the number 2 and 22. The musician Phil Collins resides in the UK, and he has won 8 Grammy Awards. On the same day Trump was in the UK, Phil Collins was in the news for being in a hospital in the UK. The news came from a spokesperson for Collins who confirmed that, contrary to the rumors, the 8-time Grammy winner is not on his deathbed. Paul Simon's predicted death will point to Revelation chapter 8. The news of Collins' deathbed rumor was on July 26th, 144 hours before Simon is predicted to die, which is incidentally 6 days. Okay? G726 in the Greek concordance is the word that means rapture, and in Bible prophecy, a symbolic 144,000 souls are raptured. So in other words, we have this 144 hours from the date that hints at the rapture, and the rapture is symbolized by 144. Collins was a founding, and do I get into it here? And this leads to Simon's predicted death. Simon's 7th solo album was Graceland, and Graceland hints at the rapture, and the 144,000 souls that are raptured is described in the 7th chapter of the Bible, of Revelation. Now, Phil Collins was a founding member of the band Genesis. Collins is 74 years old. Genesis 7:4 regards the 7-day warning God gave before the flood judgment. And again, Simon's death will point to Revelation 8:1, which precedes the 7 trumpets of judgment. The news of Collins's deathbed rumor is 7 days, as in the 7-day warning in Genesis 7:4, including the date 7/26, before Simon's predicted death. In the book of Revelation, the Church of Philadelphia is one of the 7 churches and is the only church that Jesus said would be raptured. In 1985, Phil Collins performed at both of the Live Aid concerts in London and the Live Aid concert in Philadelphia. So Phil Collins has a profound connection to Philadelphia. In other words, through Live Aid, the big event in 1985. The Live Aid concerts were held to raise money for food relief for a famine in Ethiopia. The day after the statement regarding Collins's deathbed rumor, the organizer of the Live Aid concerts was in the news for accusing Israel of lying about what he claims is a famine in Gaza. He was on one of the popular Sunday morning news shows on one of the big stations in the UK. Speaking of Trump in the UK and Phil Collins in the UK, the organizer of the Live Aid concerts is British, and he was in the news the day after Phil Collins was in the news. Phil Collins is associated with Live Aid because he was the only performer that performed at both of the concerts on both continents. And interesting. Speaking of 2 continents in Happy Gilmore too. Okay, so anyway, the day after Collins was in the news, this organizer was in the news for criticizing Israel, accusing Israel of lying about the famine in Gaza, and this organizer is known for the Live Aid concerts, which were for famine in Ethiopia. Now, Gaza is south of Jerusalem, as is Ethiopia. And that's relevant because in the New Testament, Philip, the apostle Philip, was on his way south, and he met the Ethiopian in Gaza who was on his way to Egypt. After Philip encountered the Ethiopian in Gaza, who was on his way to Ethiopia in the direction of south, which is also the direction of, the Ethiopian was on his way to Egypt, and which is in the same direction as Ethiopia, just south of Egypt. Okay, and so after the encounter and Philip showed the Ethiopian Bible prophecy and the truth about Christ, Philip disappeared. He was raptured and taken to another part of Israel. Okay, so speaking of the rapture symbolism, now, that's why the famine in Gaza connects with the famine in Ethiopia through this prophetic sign here. Now, Gaza has a population of 2.3 million, and a few days after the Hamas invasion, there was a prophetic sign in Gaza that involved an errant Hamas rocket that killed 200 to 300 Gazans at one of its 23 hospitals that serve the 2.3 million. That's a bunch of 23s. The reason for that is because the Antichrist is the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school. Okay, now, Bob Geldof, the organizer of the Live Aid concerts, made his anti-Israel comments 2 + 3 days, as in the 23s here, because his comment was about Gaza, and Gaza is about 2.3, or rather the number 23. And so Geldof made his comments about the anti-Israel comments about Gaza 2 + 3 days before Paul Simon is predicted to die. And Paul Simon is Jewish. Simon's the truth about these people that criticize Israel like this irrationally is that they are anti-Semitic. But the modern anti-Semitism on the left is anti-Israel politics. It's all spiritual, though. Like I'm saying, they ultimately hate God. That's why they are aligned with Satan, who is aligned against Israel. Because Bible prophecy speaks of the opposite and the restoration of Israel. And these people do not want the restoration of Israel, including the Gazans, but also the people that support the Muslims in Gaza. If you mistakenly think because of the propaganda that there is a people called Palestinians, you should know that Yasser Arafat, the famous Palestinian leader of the Palestinians, was born in Cairo, Egypt. Why was he born in Cairo, Egypt? And then lived in Palestine or Israel? Well, because his parents moved there for opportunity, seeking a better life because of the opportunity that was being created in the newly developed land, which was a desolation prior to the Jews returning in the late 19th century and early 20th century, when they started to make the land that was a desert into an agricultural paradise through their ingenuity. Yes, there were a handful of Jews and Arabs living in that area, and a very, very small number living in Jerusalem, not in the area, I should say in Jerusalem, because of the history of Jerusalem. But beyond that, no. The land was not developed. And the neighboring Arabs coming from desperate places economically migrated to the land. And then they had, 10 children per family, and they started to threaten the demographics, and then you had the war because of the religion of Islam telling them that they need to be at war with Jews. Okay? That's the truth. So even if that weren't the truth, it's still, anyway, the truth is the Jews come from Judea. That's where their religion comes from. Now, there's going to be those that will say, well, there's the Jews that are from Europe and they weren't originally from Judea. Well, there's some truth to that. There's the Ashkenazi Jews, this people that once in history where the king, near the Black Sea, where the king determined that the nation should become Jewish. And these people explain there's a lot of Jews today that are descendants of the Ashkenazi Jews. But there are also a lot of Sephardic Jews, Jews from the Mediterranean or migrated from when they were taken to the Mediterranean from Israel to other places. But the Sephardic Jews look like Arabs, and they are originally from Israel. Okay? Why did Satan create Ashkenazi Jews? Well, it's not Satan. And these people are Jews, and they belong in Israel, don't get me wrong. But he did this sort of thing to confuse you, to be part of the propaganda. The people like Bob Geldof, these leftists that have replaced, like I said earlier, Christianity with politics. And because their religion is false, everything they believe is false. Like everything. Including their position on Israel, for example. Because they all believe lies. Satan is the king of lies. Everything that comes from him is lies. And so their religion and their politics is all lies. All of it. And it's easily learned that it's all lies if one even has one little bit interest in the truth. But people like Bob Geldof are not interested in truth. They're interested in their religion. They're interested in feeling good about themselves. Because that's human nature. They need to feel better than other people. And so the leftist, the Democrat, the progressive, use their politics to make them feel more righteous and more moral than the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton put it, that are beneath them. The backward-thinking, supposedly Christians, for example. So they use their politics as ideology to prop their sense of morality up above others. And that's why progressive politics constantly changes. Because once the majority of culture, for example, accepted gay marriage, they needed to then be another step ahead of everyone else. They needed to still be the moral leaders. And so that transitions into, no pun intended, transgenderism, the next step. But it gets even more irrational and more sinful. But that's where it all leads. And the castration of genitalia of young pre-adult people, for example. That's all part of the religion. Because the progressive needs to be constantly more progressive than the rest of the pack in order to elevate their sense of morality and superiority, their sense of moral superiority over others, to justify their religion and to justify the doing away with Christianity, because they need to have their religion be morally superior to Christianity. And so it ever needs to, and part of the psychology is that they're better than everyone else. And when everyone else catches up to them, for example, on the issue of gay marriage, they need to go further, right? And anyway, that's the types like Bob Geldof. Their politics is furthermore all based in emotion. Emotions are their politics. If you ask them, well, how do you come to conclude your beliefs? Where do you get your values from? Well, I just feel that this is right, and I just feel this is wrong. It's all emotion. So when your right and wrong or originate in emotions, you are susceptible to all kinds of lies that Satan will tell you. You are gullible because your foundation, your core root of your religion is your own emotions. Furthermore, you have made yourself God. You have decided what is right and wrong, and that's in the Bible, that's the biggest transgression of all. The first commandment, the thing that God hates most in the Bible is false religion and false gods. The ultimate false god is the belief that the person is God, which is, by the way, the satanic reason for Hinduism and the Eastern religion and New Age today, and yoga and meditation. The idea that you can self-evolve, supposedly, your spirit and to become more in touch with God, etc., and be more God-like and become God ultimately. Remember that you are God, etc., because you are God. That is that's the height of sin. And that's not by coincidence what a lot of these progressive secular leftists believe, if they're not atheist. And so that's why these people like Bob Geldof have been fooled. And they're on their way to hell, believing these lies, for example, the lies about Israel. And that's what motivates. The lies about Israel, in this example, are what motivate Bob Geldof to get onto a TV camera and start bashing Israel. And even the thing that he's talking about, even that story itself, is propaganda. The whole thing about starvation going on in Gaza is also propaganda. Anyway, let's move on here. Because all leftist politics is propaganda. It's all a lie. Communists are the masters of lies and propaganda. Now, let's see. So Bob Geldof did a statement 2 + 3 days. Bob Geldof talked about Gaza, and Gaza is associated with the number 20, as I just explained. Okay, and so Paul Simon's predicted death on the first day of the 8th month will point to the trumpets of judgment in Revelation chapter 8, some of which will cause famines around the globe. So these things that will occur in the trumpet judgments in Revelation chapter 8, which is what Paul Simon's death will point to, will engender famines. Because what's going to happen is that an asteroid is going to hit Earth and trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and possibly other volcanoes, which will spew ash into the atmosphere, which will cause crop failures, cool temperatures, and there will then be a food shortage, a rationing of food, and the rationed food will be used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist. Only the supposed good citizens who take the mark of the Antichrist will be able to buy and sell the rationed food. And so anyway, that's what's coming. That's what the 8th chapter is speaking of, and that's why the connection with this theme of famine from the Bob Geldof sign here, which is confirmed again through Phil Collins, because he is associated with Live Aid also. And Trumpet, God's Trumpet, was in the UK to confirm all of this. He was in the UK at the time during this weekend when we had the Bob Geldof sign and the Phil Collins sign. See how it all works? It's so amazing. Now, and it's trumpets. It's trumpet judgments we're talking about that will bring about the famine. And Trump was in the UK, where Bob Geldof is. Okay, now let's see, where was I? In turn, Simon's predicted death on the 8th of the month will be 888 hours before a major event involving Israel on September 7th, 2025. It is possible that Israel will use a nuclear weapon on this day. I haven't had time to confirm more about what's going to happen, but something's going to happen, and it seems that it will involve Israel. It's what I thought initially. Then I thought, well, maybe it'll be the U.S. that will bomb and nuke Tehran on September 7th. But here we have an example of God definitely pointing with Israel to September 7th, okay? And again, Paul Simon's death, like I've been explaining, points to Revelation chapter 8 and also Amos chapter 8, by the way. And Amos chapter 8, as I mentioned earlier, I think, is about the restoration of Israel. Well, I think I mentioned it in a bit also. So anyway, that's why the 888 hours, which by the way is 37 days, between Simon's death and this whatever is going to happen involving Israel on September 7th. It could be the nuking of Damascus or the nuking of Tehran, or maybe both. To confirm his signs and connections, God pairs the numbers 23 and 44. After the Israelites escaped Egypt, they spent 40 years in the desert before they entered into the Promised Land. July 13th, 2025 was the 40th anniversary of Live Aid. The 40th anniversary of Live Aid is the 4 plus 4th prime number as an 8th prime number of days before it is predicted that Paul Simon will die, and his death will point to the 8th chapters of Revelation and Amos in the Bible. Okay, Simon is also connected to the symbolism. Okay, let me explain that a little more here. So the 40th anniversary of Live Aid is relevant because the Live Aid was for famine in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is essentially Egypt in terms of a reference from ancient Israel. Like I said, in ancient Israel, Philip encountered the Ethiopian who was traveling to Egypt because he was a servant of the Queen of Egypt, just coming up to Jerusalem to worship. 40, though, because of this connection to Egypt, 40 years is how much time the Israelites spent in the desert after they escaped Egypt. So that's why 40 years here. But again, the Live Aid's connected to Egypt because of Ethiopia. Okay, so now this 40th anniversary of Live Aid on July 13th was the 4 plus 4th prime number of days, 19 days, before it is predicted that Paul Simon will die. And his death will point to the 8th chapters of Revelation and Amos, and This is the eighth prime number. The 4 plus fourth prime number is the eighth prime number. Simon is also connected to the symbolism in a door, and the symbol for a door is the fourth letter of the Jewish alphabet. Okay, so Simon's death is 4 plus fourth prime number of days after the 40th anniversary of Live Aid. Bob Geldof's statements about Israel and famine were made 2 plus 3 days before Simon's predicted death. So that's a pairing of 23 and 44. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And I know that these are the numbers because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. The 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school. The plot of the movie Happy Gilmore and Happy Gilmore 2 regards the loss and recovery of the home, the house, of Gilmore's grandmother. Sandler and his character Gilmore are both known to be Jewish. This is symbolism for the loss and recovery of the Jews' ancient homeland. That's the symbolism in the grandmother too, right? That's like your ancestors. And the movie, it's amazing. Think about that. The movie is about the loss and recovery of the home. That's the plot of the movie. Gilmore has to go out and win the money in the golf tournaments to get the money to get grandma's house back. And Sandler and the character are Jewish. And the home symbolizes the homeland of the ancestors. The loss and restoration of the ancient Jewish homeland is described in the 8th and 9th chapters of the book of Amos in the Bible. By the way, Paul Simon was first signed by Wally Amos, the founder of famous Amos Cookies, who died at the age of 88, as in book of Amos chapter 8. And he died on the 9th of Av, which is this ominous date in the Jewish calendar, if you know what I'm talking about. It's like the big day, which regards the restoration of Israel and regards the loss of Israel. Because the first and second temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av, the 9th chapter of Amos speaks of the restoration of the temple even, in fact, specifically. And that's why famous Amos died at the age of 88 on the 9th of Av. And on that day, 9 Jewish protesters were arrested on the freeway in California for protesting against the Israeli war in Gaza. Because Jews can also be secular progressive leftists and have the false religion. And that makes them sometimes anti-Israel. Or, if you will, see the truth about the issues of the day from the wrong light, from the lies, from the propaganda. Paul Simon is also known, and also the unrighteous, and importantly, their politics is unrighteous in every way. I mean, in all examples. It's always unrighteous. That's the way Satan works. Right? Bob Geldof is an unrighteous person for his claiming and accusing Israel of lying about the famine in Gaza and it being caused by the Israeli army. No way am I saying that Israel is always perfect, but Israel is a moral society. It's like a Western country. It has its values. It has more morality than Western countries today in general. But I should take that back. There's a lot of sin in the, there's a lot of decadence and a lot of debauchery and social decay in the young generation, like everywhere in the world today. And furthermore, they know that they walk on eggshells because of the scrutiny the world media has on them. And so they do things that they need to do in the most humane way possible. But the truth is, those who have the blood on their hands for anything that happens in Gaza right now is Hamas, and those who support Hamas, which is the majority of Gazans. That's right. And does the leftist understand that sort of thinking? No. They think like communists. They think in terms of power. They don't think in terms of right and wrong. They think only in terms of powerful and weak, because their worldview is upside down. They're with Satan. So, now, Simon is, and there are still 50 hostages, right? There's still lots of hostages. So, anyway, but anyway, the like I said, the famine thing is a propaganda story from the left media, which is truthfully working for Satan. They might not know it consciously, but Satan is working through them. Their spirit is aligned with Satan. The media that's filled with secular leftist progressives. Because the truth is, spiritually, every person is either aligned with Satan or with God. That's all there is to it. And some people are more with the one or the other. It's a spectrum, but anyway, okay. Now, so what I was getting at here is that I think I said it all. Simon is connected to the symbolism of the door, fourth letter of the Jewish alphabet, and Geldof's statements about Israel and famine were made 2 + 3 days before Simon's predicted death. So we got the 4 + 4th prime number of days and the 2 + 3 days connection. That gives us the 44 and 23 pairing to confirm the signs and connections. Oh yeah, what am I talking about? I'm way down here at this point. So, okay. So this is an amazing thing. It's through, I know I got off track with the 9th of Av and famous Amos dying on the 9th of Av at the age of 88. That's how I got. So why did God do that though? It's because Wally Amos, famous Amos Cookies, signed Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, the first to do so, and he did it through luring them into his office with a gift of cookies. It got us so creative. Now, so that ultimately pointed to the book of Amos, though, and also specifically the 8th and 9th chapters. And that's the chapters about the loss and restoration of Israel. And that's the theme of the symbolic theme of the movie Happy Gilmore, too. Because the movie is about Sandler's character who is Jewish and the recovery of the home, as in the ancient homeland of the grandmother. Okay. Paul Simon is also known to be Jewish and is also associated with Saturday Night Live. His death will point to the 8th chapters of Revelation and Amos, and his death will be 888 hours before the predicted major event involving Israel on September 7th. This is also 37 days, and Amos 3:7 tells us that God does nothing without first revealing it to his servants. So God is also pointing to Amos 3:7, and this is one example. Simon's predicted death will be 37 days, the equivalent of 888 hours from the death that will point to the 8th chapters of Revelation and Amos. But in the book of Amos is also Amos 3:7, and it tells us that God does nothing without first revealing it to his servants. And this contradicts the false heretical doctrine of imminence, which I explain in other videos. If you are a Christian, the most important video for you on this channel arguably is the 23 church signs video. And I've explained it enough. I don't want to get into another tangent here. This video's gone on long enough. The doctrine of imminence is false. Matthew 24:36 is misinterpreted and mistranslated. It contradicts the other verses in the Bible. Enough, okay? And I'm proving it. I'm proving it. When the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove that the doctrine of imminence is false. That's the purpose of the prediction, okay? That's all I need to say. You can do away with the doctrine of imminence. It contradicts the Bible, okay? Jesus commanded us to watch. If we're not watching the Lord's timing, then what are we watching for? He said in Revelation 3:3, therefore watch. If you will not watch, I will come at an hour you do not expect. Therefore, if you are watching, you will know the hour is coming. Just one verse that contradicts the Matthew 24:36 verse. No one knows the day, the most quoted verse in the Bible. Why? Because it is an excuse for these quote-unquote Christians to use to not watch and to not study prophecy, etc. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Revelation 19:10. Okay? Okay, so start studying prophecy if you want to testify. And also watch, because Jesus commanded you to. It's not an option. This is the watching channel. This is the only channel where God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is being explained. And the purpose of the prediction, which I know far better than you, the reason and purpose for the prediction, is to prove the controversial things that I am saying. Make no mistake. And one of those things is that the doctrine of imminence is false. Even the context of Matthew 24:36 talks about Noah, and Noah knew the precise timing of the flood judgment. So did Lot know the precise timing. What? The servants now cannot know the precise timing? No. This is what it says. I'll read it again. Amos 3:7 tells us that God does nothing without his first revealing it to his servants. I'm his servant. He is revealing the timing of things. And when the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove this. To confirm his signs and connections, God pairs the numbers 23 and 44. The Israelites escaped Egypt. After the Israelites escaped Egypt, they spent 40 years in the desert before they entered the Promised Land. July 13th, 2025 was the 40th anniversary of Live Aid. Live Aid was for relief of famine in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is south of Egypt, and in the Bible, the Ethiopians served the Queen of Egypt. The 40th anniversary of Live Aid for Ethiopia is the 4 plus 4th prime number of days, 8th prime number of days. Before it is predicted that Paul Simon will die, and his death will point to the 8th chapters of Revelation and Amos. Simon is also connected to the symbolism in a door, and the symbolism for a door is the 4th letter of the Jewish alphabet. Geldof's statements regarding the Jewish state of Israel and famine were made 2 plus 3 days before Simon's predicted death. Paul Simon is also connected to Africa through his most popular solo album, Graceland, which was partly inspired by South African music, and Simon was criticized and recorded in South Africa, and was criticized by United Artists Against Apartheid for recording some of the music for the album in South Africa. So you see this parallel here too. It's profound. We have this, like, if you will, music union of different artists behind both of these movements, the apartheid one and the famine one. Bob Geldof, Paul Simon. Okay? Get it? And it's also involving Africa. All right. Adam Sandler is known for his satirical Happy Hanukkah song that he performed on Saturday Night Live. On the same opening weekend of Sandler's Happy Gilmore 2 movie, the famous satirist who wrote songs about Jewish holidays died. Tom Lehrer wrote and sang the famous song Hanukkah in Santa Monica, died at the age of 97. This confirms these connections. In this email thread that lead to the date it is predicted something major will occur involving Israel, the Jewish state, on the date 9/7. That's why this guy died at the age of 97. This is amazing. Okay? This is a news story in the Jerusalem Post. Okay, at this time, he died during this same opening weekend of the Happy Gilmore, And again, the Happy Gilmore theme is symbolic of the loss and restoration of Israel. And whatever is going to happen on September 7th, 9/7, will be a part of this restoration of Israel. And this guy who, like Adam Sandler, who sang satirical songs about the Jewish holidays, died during the time of Adam Sandler's prophetic movie at the age of 97. This is amazing. Happy Gilmore hints at Sandler's song Happy Hanukkah. Well, that's interesting too, right? Happy Gilmore hints at Sandler's song Happy Hanukkah, which ties to Tom Lehrer's death at 97 through Hanukkah in Santa Monica. By the way, Sandler, I assume, made his movie in Hollywood. Or maybe he did. No, maybe he didn't. Anyway, it's a Hollywood movie. And the reason for saying that is because Santa Monica is near Hollywood. Tom Lehrer died on 7/26, which is at G726 in the Greek concordance, the word that means rapture, 144 hours before Simon's predicted to die. Simon is Jewish. The number 144 the number 144 symbolizes the rapture in Bible prophecy, and 144 is derived from the 12 tribes of Israel, as mentioned in Revelation chapter 7. Simon's 7th solo album was Graceland, which is symbolic of rapture. If you, by the way, don't know what the rapture is, it's the most preposterous idea in Christianity when all of the faithful followers of Jesus will disappear and not go through the end times tribulation, wrath of God period, and then will return with God or Jesus at his second coming. But you see here that the 144 comes from the 12 tribes of Israel in the Bible prophecy about the rapture, and that's why Tom Lehrer died on the date that symbolizes the rapture, 144 hours before the death of Simon, whose album Graceland, his most popular one, is symbolic of the rapture. See? All right. Simon's death will point to Revelation 8 and Amos 8, and 888 is the numeric value of the Greek name for Jesus in Greek gematria. Tom Lehrer was born 8 years, 8 months, and 8 days before Pope Francis. He has a song called The Vatican Rag. Tom Lehrer died exactly 45 months before it is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected on April 26th, 2029. As the Antichrist, Pope Francis will persecute Jews in Judea and worldwide. The inverse of 45, as in this 45 months connection, is 0.022. Sandler's movie that was released during the weekend that Lehrer died pointed to the number 22, and the movie is named Happy Gilmore 2. And I explained how the love interests point to the number 22 earlier. The number 2 hints at the second restoration of Israel after the second exile of the Jews around the world, right? The first temple was destroyed, the Jews were exiled to Babylon. They came back, first restoration. Then the second temple was destroyed, the Jews were exiled around the world. Now they've come back from around the world, literally, in the second restoration, which is why the 2s in Happy Gilmore 2, which has the theme of the restoration of the home of the ancient grandmother. You get it? And, it also hints at the second coming of Christ, who said he would return when the Jews call upon him by his name. That's one of the conditions. So in the Jews' greatest hour of need, when the enemies of Israel are lined up surrounding Judea, ready to destroy it, the Jews will finally call out for Jesus to save them. And then the second coming will happen. And the enemies of the Jews will be vanquished. And then Jesus will rule from Jerusalem, from the Temple Mount, for the 1,000 years of peace on earth. Tom Lehrer died at 97 days, inclusive count, including, in other words, the day that he died, after the death of Pope Francis. And I just connected him with Pope Francis's resurrection. And let's see, it was also before his birth, 8 years, 8 months, 8 days. Lehrer's birth date on April 9th leaves 266 days in the calendar year, and Pope Francis was the 266th Pope. So this Jewish satirist, singer, songwriter, his death at 97, it's all pointing to Pope Francis. Or rather, it's part of this restoration of Israel sign, and what will precede the second coming will be the persecution from the world through Pope Francis, the first of the two antichrists. Barack Obama is the second antichrist who will get his power from Pope Francis after he's resurrected. Now, come to think of it though, the number 97 is the 25th prime number, and the number 25 is synonymous in Bible prophecy, symbolizes the restored temple and Temple Mount in the book of Ezekiel. And Pope Francis will be on the Temple Mount as the Antichrist. So that's another reason for this 97 here. That's amazing. Here is a diagram that illustrates the connections to September 7th through Happy Gilmore. I maintain that the iconic fight scene between Sandler and Barker is to point to the bombing of Iran. Sandler equals Jewish, and Barker hosted for a record 35 years, and Persia became Iran, renamed itself in 1935. The trail of science has not ended. It did not end on June 16th, the day that Israel bombed Iran. There's more to come. So I'm going to get into this in another video. I'm going to explain this diagram more in another video. That's enough for this video. But here we can see, by the way, these fours here in the Fantastic Four and the getting hit in the forehead with the golf ball, and golf being 4 letters and yelling 4 when there's an errant golf ball. That's 44 days before June 7th, okay? That's interesting too. Adam Sandler was born exactly 266 weeks after Barack Obama. This confirms that Barack Obama is the second Antichrist who will get his power from the resurrected Pope Francis, the 266th Pope. That's amazing. So Adam Sandler is also connected to the Antichrist here. We had both of these satirical singers of Jewish holidays, Adam Sandler with his Happy Hanukkah, and Tom Lehrer with his Hanukkah in Santa Monica. Both of their births connect to both of the two Antichrists. Furthermore, it's Happy Gilmore too, as in Happy Hanukkah, Happy Gilmore too, two Antichrists. Amazing, because 266 is the first Antichrist, Barack Obama is the second, and that's why the 266 weeks connection. It's amazing beyond words. These two satirist singers about the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah have their birth dates connected with the birth dates of the two Antichrists. Hanukkah, so that's amazing, right? And furthermore, it's Happy Gilmore too. Hanukkah is about the restored temple, and Sandler's movie is about the Happy Gilmore 2 is about the restored Jewish home. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.